Sound of silverware gently clinking, soft jazz in the background, the hum of polite conversation. Then a pause, a breath, a voice begins. My name is Marion Louise Carter. I turned 68 last month, widowed 10 years, retired 5, 3 children, all grown, all successful by most people's standards. And yet the worst thing I ever did was raise them too well. I made them think love came with no price, that giving was endless, that I'd always be there not just in body but in sacrifice. But that birthday lunch, that was the day I realized they didn't love me. They were counting down the days until I died. It was a Sunday, sunny, warm, the kind of early spring that made the dogwoods bloom outside my bay window. I'd spent the morning making my mother's lemon cake recipe, the one they used to beg for every Easter. I set the table with real linen napkins ironed that morning, used the good china, for them. They arrived late, all 3. Ellis, the oldest, swept in first, all big smile and booming voice. Real estate lawyer, makes 6 figures, drives a car that costs more than my house did in 1975. He kissed me on the cheek without really looking. Hey, Mom, smells like heart disease in here. Kidding. He wasn't. Claire followed, wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a designer tote. I know cost more than my monthly pension. She didn't take the sunglasses off. She never does. Too busy being seen. She air-kissed me. Oh God, you're still using candles. You know that's a fire hazard, right? Then came Marcus, my baby, the one I sang lullabies to during his asthma attacks. Now 38, tech consultant, been between jobs for 3 years. Always charming, always broke. He walked in like he owned the place. You didn't hire a caterer, Mom. Come on, it's your birthday. I smiled. I always smile. That's what mothers do, even when their hearts feel like they're slowly collapsing in on themselves. Lunch started normally enough. The usual small talk. Compliments on the roast, which I knew they didn't mean. Claire pushed her potatoes around. Marcus drank 3 glasses of my wine. Ellis took a call during dessert. Then the real conversation began. Ellis cleared his throat and leaned forward, folding his hands like he was in court. Mom, he said, have you thought more about your estate plan? I mean, now that you're, getting up there. I blinked. Getting up where? He chuckled. You know what I mean. We care about you. We want things to be clear. Avoid confusion down the road. Claire chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. It's actually responsible, Mom. You wouldn't want us fighting over who gets what. That's not your style. Marcus nodded, wiping his mouth with one of my embroidered napkins. Yeah, and I mean the house, the savings. It's not like you're going to use it. We could turn this place into something nice. Airbnb, maybe. Split the profits. I sat there, fork frozen, halfway to my mouth. Did they rehearse this overgroup text, maybe between Pilates and martinis? I set my silverware down. I have a will. It's in the safety deposit box. You each get 1/3. That should have been enough, but it wasn't. Ellis exchanged a look with Claire. Claire leaned in, voice low. Well, we were thinking, maybe you could just make it official now. Sign over the house. Make Marcus co-owner. Set up the accounts. It's simpler. Simpler for who I asked. She smiled like a pageant queen correcting a child. For everyone. You'd still live here, obviously, but it'd be managed. Managed, I repeated. That way, Marcus added, you're not alone if anything happens. And hey, if you need cash later, we could reverse mortgage it, maybe even sell, and move you to something smaller, safer. Ah, there it was. This wasn't about avoiding legal confusion. This was about control. About cutting the cake before I was even cold. I said nothing for a long moment. Just sipped my tea and watched the sunlight shift across the tablecloth. Then I stood up. I cleared the dishes. I smiled and offered everyone more cake. They took it. Of course they did. When they left, they hugged me, told me I was the best mom ever, promised to check in soon. The front door closed behind them with the soft hiss of finality. I stood in the quiet kitchen holding the knife I'd used to slice the cake. It was clean now. I'd washed it. But somehow it still felt like it had blood on it. That night, I didn't cry. I went into the garage, pulled out the fireproof box where I kept my important papers, the original will, my husband's military medals, a few love letters I'd never thrown out. And I stared at them for a long time. 3 children, 3 ways to be disappointed, but tomorrow I'd call my lawyer. And I'd rewrite my legacy. Soft ticking of a clock, a coffee machine bubbling, a lawyer's office faintly humming in the background. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Alan Merriweather, my estate attorney. We went to church together for decades, but it had been a while since I'd last seen him. When he answered, and I explained what I needed, there was a pause, then a quiet, measured reply. Marion, I was wondering when you'd call. He'd seen it too then, the same cold light in their eyes, the calculations behind their concern. He scheduled me for that Thursday morning. Alan's office smelled like old wood and dry legal paper. Same place where I'd signed my original will 12 years ago, back when my husband was still alive, and I believed our children were good-hearted adults who just needed time. Alan looked older now, thinner, but his eyes were sharp as ever. We went over everything. Assets, property insurance, savings. I had more than they thought, and less than they assumed they deserved. I told him I wanted to update my will. He raised an eyebrow. What prompted the change? I leaned back in the chair, laced my fingers together. My kids threw me a birthday lunch, I said. He waited, knowing there was more. And they spent the entire time trying to figure out how to inherit me before I died. He didn't flinch, just nodded. You're not the first. We went line by line. The house, the land, the jewelry, my late husband's coin collection, the CD savings account I'd been growing for the last 30 years. All of it reassigned. To the Children's Literacy Fund, to the Hope Women's Shelter, to the Music and Memory Project for elders with dementia. All charities I'd supported quietly for years, the kind of places that lifted others up instead of tearing them down. Each of my children, I left them $1. It wasn't about the money. It was about the line, the message. Alan had the papers drawn up that afternoon. I signed them with a hand that didn't tremble. We locked the new will in his office vault and made certified copies for safekeeping. He offered to have a witness come in, but I insisted. I want my neighbor Elise to sign. She's known me 20 years. She knows the truth. He smiled. That'll hold up even if they try to fight it. I know, I said. They'll try. I went home and made dinner for myself. Chicken soup, 1 bowl. Nobody came by. Nobody called. The next morning, I opened my mailbox and found a large white envelope, no stamp, no return address. Inside was a copy of my will. But it wasn't the one I just signed. The paper was thick, formal. It looked professional. But the signature on the bottom wasn't mine. Not really. It was a good imitation, the loop on the M, the slant of the C in Carter, but it was off. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just pressure anymore. It wasn't emotional manipulation or inheritance fishing. It was forgery. Someone, one of my children, had taken my old will, rewritten it to assign everything to Ellis, as executor Claire, as co-owner of the house, and Marcus as beneficiary of all liquid assets. 3 names, neatly organized, equal shares. No. It gave Ellis controlling power. It gave Claire the house immediately. It gave Marcus a tax-sheltered trust as if he were a dependent minor. I stared at the fake document for a long time. Then I looked up and realized something chilling. Whoever did this wasn't just hoping for my death. They were planning for it. I called Alan immediately. He had me bring the document in. He looked at it under a magnifying lens, holding it up to the light like some rare artifact. This wasn't drafted by a real firm, he said, but it's good. Good enough to trick a bank, a title office, maybe even probate court if no one's watching. Can you prove it's fake? Oh, absolutely, he said. I know your real signature, and more importantly, We just refiled with a notary and 2 independent witnesses. This," he tapped the paper, "is attempted fraud." He looked up at me. "Do you want to press charges?" That question sat between us like a loaded gun. I thought about Marcus crashing on my couch in college. I thought about Claire crying into my lap when her husband left. I thought about Ellis standing tall and cold like his father on the worst days. And I thought one of them is a criminal. Maybe more than one. "I don't want to go to court," I said finally. Alan waited. "But I do want to make sure they never get 1 cent they didn't earn." He nodded slowly. "Then let's prepare for battle, the quiet kind." Back home, I put the forged will into a drawer and locked it with a key. Then I opened my recipe book, pulled out a blank page, and began writing a letter. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I was no longer their mother, in the way they thought. I was something else now. A woman who'd been underestimated for the very last time. Sound of drawers opening. Soft rustle of papers. A teacup clinks gently onto a saucer. After Alan locked the new will in his vault, I didn't tell anyone. Not the neighbors. Not my pastor. Not even Elise, though she'd been my friend since Marcus was in diapers. Some things don't need an audience. They just need precision. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived like everything was fine. Claire called once to ask if I'd considered selling the house while the market's hot. She had a buyer in mind, some investor friend. Wanted me to move into one of those senior high-rises where everything smells like Lysol and boiled peas. I told her I'd think about it. She laughed. "Don't take too long, Mom. You know how fast the market moves." Marcus texted me a meme about inheriting the family fortune and added a winking emoji. I didn't reply. Ellis sent over a standard estate transfer packet by email. I opened the PDF. It was essentially a thinly veiled power of attorney form giving him full control over my bank account and house. I filed it away in a folder marked evidence. They thought I was slow, old, gullible. But I was a librarian for 42 years. Do you know what that teaches you? How to recognize liars, how to file things, and how to find information people try to bury. I started pulling everything. Property deed, insurance, vehicle title, even the copyright to my late husband's gospel hymn collection. They'd forgotten about that. I hadn't. Then quietly, I met with 3 people. Not lawyers, not bankers. The first was Janice Holcomb, director of a literacy center downtown that runs after-school reading programs in underserved neighborhoods. She wore old shoes and carried a battered canvas bag filled with library cards for children who'd never been read to at home. The second was Reverend Thomas, who ran a soup kitchen out of a collapsing church basement. Every Friday, he fed 300 people using nothing but donation surplus bread and a smile that never faded even when the rice ran out. The third was Gloria Neumann, a woman I'd once mentored, now the founder of a shelter for women escaping domestic violence. They offered beds, legal advice, and sanctuary. No questions asked. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. That I was preparing to make some changes. That they'd be named beneficiaries in a future estate. That no, I wasn't dying yet, not physically. But something was ending. One night, while sorting through the attic, I found a shoebox I hadn't opened in years. Inside, photos from when the kids were little, birthday cards, a handprint from Marcus in blue paint, a note from Claire when she was 10, "Mommy, I will always take care of you when you're old." And a picture of Ellis, age 16, winning a mock trial tournament. He'd written on the back, "I'll make you proud one day. Love you." I sat on the attic floor and cried. Not because I missed those children, but because they were gone. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I dressed up. Hair done, earrings on, real lipstick, not the medicated kind. I put on my dark green Sunday dress, not for church, for power. I walked into the community foundation downtown and started the paperwork. Endowments, naming funds, conditional disbursements. Alan reviewed everything for legal accuracy. Every cent of my life's work would go where it mattered. And when the time came, not a single one of my children could stop it. On the fourth Tuesday after the birthday lunch, I hosted another dinner. Ellis arrived with his sleeves rolled up like a campaign manager. Claire brought wine and made a point of checking the bottle's label in front of me. Marcus came late, no apology, wearing the same hoodie I'd seen on a viral mugshot last week. I made pot roast. They didn't notice I didn't eat. Ellis launched into a pitch about how families lose wealth through probate. Claire talked about how her husband's parents were already gifting properties before death. Marcus asked if I'd ever thought about crypto. I smiled, nodded, passed the gravy. Then when dessert came, I served 3 slices of lemon cake and poured myself a scotch instead. Claire raised an eyebrow. Wow, Mom, you're drinking now. I met her gaze without blinking, just celebrating clarity. As they were leaving, Ellis slapped me on the back. You're doing the right thing, Mom. You won't regret this. I watched them drive away from the porch I paid for, the railing I sanded, the mailbox with my name on it. And when their headlights disappeared down the hill, I finally whispered, I already don't. Background ambiance, light party chatter, glasses clinking, muffled laughter through open windows. A soft piano note underscores the narrator's steady tone. 2 weeks after the dinner, Claire threw a cocktail party in my living room. I wasn't invited, but I was home. I was upstairs, behind the closed bedroom door, lights off, listening. The front door hadn't even closed behind me before I heard Marcus say, Seriously, Claire, it's basically ours now. Might as well break it in. Someone else laughed. Ellis, maybe. He means the house, not Mom. Though give it another year and she'll be drooling on herself in a nursing home. Laughter followed. It echoed through the vent like static. I thought about going downstairs. Thought about standing in the middle of my own living room and saying, out, now. But I didn't. I wanted them to feel safe, to let their masks slip, to forget that the house still had one real owner, me. From upstairs I could hear every word, the music they played, the wine they poured, and the things they said. Claire, I've already picked out the backsplash I want once we redo the kitchen. Ellis, I'm talking to a broker about putting a second mortgage on this place. Just need Mom to sign a few health documents, and we're golden. Marcus, I'm putting in a studio. Finally start my podcast. Gonna call it The Heir Apparent. That one got a laugh, a long one. When I finally did walk down the stairs, no one noticed right away. I stood in the doorway to the kitchen for almost a full minute before Claire spotted me. Oh, Mom, we thought you were asleep. I said, but your friend parked on my rose bushes. Her smile faltered for a second. Then she shrugged, sipping her drink. We'll take care of it. Ellis clapped a hand on my shoulder. You look great, Mom. You getting some rest? You know we're all here for you. That was the moment I realized how good they were at this, how well practiced, not just at deception, at performance, at saying all the right things with none of the right heart. I'm going back upstairs, I said. No worries, Marcus called after me. We'll clean up everything. You just relax. Your house is in good hands. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, turned back. No, I said, it's in my hands. Then I smiled, soft and patient. And I went back up to finish writing my funeral instructions. Because by then I knew. The diagnosis had come a week earlier. My doctor had used words like advanced limited options and comfort care. Pancreatic. Fast, efficient, poetic. The children didn't know yet. I didn't want them to. I spent the next week preparing. I met with Alan again, finalized the transfer instructions, set up the executor terms. I made sure my attorney and only my attorney would have access to the vault. Then I visited the charities again, quietly, signed the paperwork, wrote the final checks, and I made 3 copies of the letter I'd written, one for each of them, same envelope, same message. No threats, no dramatics, just the truth. On my last good day, I baked one more lemon cake. I didn't frost it. Didn't need to. I wrapped it in foil, left it on the counter with a note from my neighbor, Elise. If they don't want it, give it to the shelter. Then I took a long, slow walk around the house. ran my fingers along the hallway banister, touched the door frame where I'd measured their heights each year, listened to the wind move through the curtains. I slept well that night, and in the morning, I didn't wake up. Low ambient tones, the distant murmur of a funeral service church bells, tolling one's footsteps on stone, then quiet. My funeral was held on a Monday. Gray sky, dry air, no flowers per my instructions. Just a photo of me from the year I turned 60, wide-brim hat, standing in front of my garden holding a tomato like it was treasure. The church was half full. Neighbors, friends from the library, women from the community shelter, a few volunteers from the literacy center. Some cried. Most just sat quietly, the kind of people who understand that grief doesn't need to perform. Ellis gave a eulogy, or tried to. He started strong, voice firm, suit perfect. Talked about how dedicated I was as a mother and how proud we were of her community service. His hands didn't shake until he saw the shelter women in the front pew, until he noticed the children's choir sitting behind them in matching blue sweaters marked Red to Grow. Claire shifted uncomfortably. Marcus squinted like someone had dimmed the lights. After the service, there was a lunch reception in the church basement. The usual spread, casseroles, sheet cake, condolences in paper napkins. I wasn't there, but I left instructions. Everything had already been paid for, even the organist's second set. What hadn't been paid for, however, was the house, the taxes, the water bill, the inheritance they'd already counted. Ellis, Claire, and Marcus stayed close together, like a jury waiting for a verdict. They shook hands politely, smiled tightly. They didn't grieve. They planned. The letter from Alan came 2 days later, delivered by courier, stamped with his firm seal. Notice of will reading Thursday, a.m. sharp. Private session. Attendance required. I imagine they exchanged texts that night. Probably screenshots. Marcus likely joked time to get paid. Claire probably said God finally. Ellis probably didn't say anything. Just started preparing the documents to transfer the title and liquidate my accounts. Thursday morning arrived bright and cruel. They came dressed like it was a corporate meeting. Claire wore black, but only because it matched her heels. Marcus had on aviators. Indoors. Ellis brought a leather briefcase. They were ready. Alan's office hadn't changed. Books lined the wall. A single lamp in the corner gave the room a kind of warm authority. He didn't offer them coffee, didn't smile, just gestured to the chairs. Let's begin. He opened the file slowly, clicked his pen once. This is the last will and testament of Marion Louise Carter. He began, his voice even and deliberate. Executed in my presence, witnessed and notarized on record. He looked up briefly. Do any of you contest the authenticity of this document? Ellis raised a hand. We were told there was another version, one that was more current. Alan didn't blink. There was an attempted forgery of a previous will. That version is inadmissible and subject to criminal investigation if pursued. A beat of silence. Claire's mouth opened, closed. Marcus shifted in his seat. Alan continued. To my eldest Ellis Benjamin Carter, I leave $1. He looked up. To acknowledge relationship. Ellis sat back in his chair, face blank, but a flush was crawling up his neck. To my daughter Claire Regina Carter, I leave $1. Claire's fingers twitched against her designer purse. The purse she'd already assumed would soon be replaced by something better. And to my youngest Marcus Eli Carter, I leave $1. Marcus scoffed. This is a joke, right? Alan set the pen down. No. He turned the page. The remainder of Mrs. Carter's estate, including the house at 501 Dawson Avenue, all associated assets, savings accounts, retirement holdings, and intellectual property shall be distributed as follows. He began to read a list, one by one. The Children's Literacy Fund, the Hope Women's Shelter, the Music and Memory Project, the Feeding Grace Soup Kitchen, a scholarship fund for library sciences at the State University. Each item came with detailed percentages, contact names, and implementation timelines. It wasn't a will, it was a plan. A masterpiece. Ellis sat perfectly still. Claire blinked rapidly, as though she could erase what she just heard. Marcus stood up. She was old. She didn't know what she was doing. Alan calmly reached into the file. And finally he said, per her request, I have 3 sealed letters, one for each of you. He held out the envelopes. Thick, heavy, their names written in my careful hand. Claire took hers like it might bite. Ellis hesitated. Marcus slapped his out of Alan's hand and stormed out. Good day, Alan said and closed the file. Just like that, the meeting ended. But the reckoning had only begun. Slow, deliberate sound of paper being unsealed. The creak of a leather chair. Silence between breaths. Ellis opened his letter in the car. He didn't wait to get home. Didn't call his wife. Didn't even drive away. He just sat there in the parking lot of Alan Merriweather's office, staring at the envelope like it might rewrite itself if he gave it enough time. But it didn't. It read exactly as I wrote it. Ellis, you were always the responsible one, the leader, the planner, the boy who wanted order in a house full of noise. I saw that. I admired it. But somewhere along the way, you began confusing control with love. You spoke to me like a project manager, not a son. You saw me not as a person to protect, but an obstacle to manage. You forged my signature. You tried to make decisions for me before I was even gone. I want you to know I forgive you, but I no longer trust you. That's why I chose to give what I built to those who will use it to build others. Not to people who would reduce my life's work to spreadsheets and sales margins. You once said, you won't regret this, Mom. You were right, I don't. Marion. He read it twice, 3 times. And then he cried, not loud, not messy. Just quietly. A man whose reflection finally cracked. Claire read hers in her walk-in closet, sitting on the bench where she used to try on shoes she hadn't yet paid for. Her hands trembled. Her letter was shorter. Claire, of all my children, you were the one who knew how to wear a mask best. Polished, charming, persuasive. But I was your mother. I saw through the polish. I watched you learn how to perform empathy instead of feel it. I watched you twist kindness into currency, something you give when it buys you advantage. I used to think you'd grow out of that. Instead, you grew into it. The house you wanted will now shelter women, escaping what I escaped when I was your age. The money you counted will now fund books for girls who remind me of you before the world taught you to measure worth in handbags and inheritance. You once told me, you're not doing anything useful with your assets, Mom. Now I am. Marion. Claire didn't cry, but she did sit there for a long, long time, surrounded by clothes she couldn't wear to meet what she'd become. Marcus didn't read his letter until the next morning. He'd spent the night drunk, crashed on a friend's couch. His phone had 27 missed calls, none from family. When he finally peeled the envelope open, the ink was already smudged from his fingers. Marcus, my baby, my boy, the one who made me laugh through the tears, the one who danced in the kitchen and called me Supermom. I loved you so deeply it blinded me. I forgave things I shouldn't have, paid for things you broke, covered for things you never took responsibility for. I thought I was helping you. I wasn't. I was teaching you that there would always be a soft landing, always another check, always another excuse. But my love was not a trust fund, and your charm isn't a currency anymore. You said, what's the point of a mom if she doesn't leave you something? So I left you $1 to remind you that you were never entitled to more than what you gave. I hope someday you give. Mom. Marcus sat there for hours, not talking, not moving. When he finally got up, he didn't tear the letter. He folded it, slowly, neatly, and placed it inside his wallet, right where his cash used to be. Soft ambient sounds, birdsong in the distance, wind brushing against tall trees, the creak of an old rocking chair. Then a woman's calm voice begins to read. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. Not vanished, not erased, but gone in the way all mothers eventually go from the center of your orbit to the edges of your memory. And I suppose now that there's nothing more to take, you're finally ready to listen. So listen well. I gave each of you life, and for a long time that felt like enough. Ellis, you were born serious. Even as a baby, your brow furrowed with purpose. You wanted rules, structure. You needed to understand the system. I gave you charts, flashcards, order. Claire, you were born dazzling. You liked attention, adored applause, lived for gold stars and glitter pins. You wanted the world to love you. I gave you mirrors, applause, endless praise. Marcus, you were born soft. My sunshine boy. You needed touch, laughter, softness. You didn't want much, just everything all the time. I gave you grace, excuses, safety. And I gave each of you my time, my health, my body, and my savings. But I never gave you boundaries. That was my mistake. You thought that because I loved you without limits. My resources had no limits. You thought my house was your inheritance, that my silence was permission, that my exhaustion was consent. It wasn't. It was heartbreak. You didn't see me, not really, because you stopped looking. You assumed I was furniture, a fixture, like the coat rack in the front hallway, useful, always there, unseen until you needed something. But I was a woman, a full thinking, breathing, deciding woman. And women like me, we notice everything. We just stay quiet until the moment comes to stop. The truth is, I didn't leave you nothing. I left you a lesson. I left you a moment you'll carry for the rest of your lives. A reminder that love is not an entitlement. That legacy is not a birthright. That who you are matters more than what you expected. And I truly hope, that one day you'll earn more than I ever could have given. Not money, not property, but grace, responsibility, and maybe respect. A pause. The woman's voice softens, full of warmth and finality. This isn't a curse. It's a gift. The kind you won't appreciate now, but maybe someday. When your own children forget to say thank you. When you feel invisible in a room you built for someone else. When your name becomes smaller on their lips. Maybe then you'll understand. And when you do know this, I loved you truly, endlessly, but this final act, it wasn't punishment. It was the first honest conversation we ever had. Goodbye, Mom.